How's it going? And welcome to episode 222 of On the Wire, proud member of the Pitcherless Podcast Network. I am Kevin Hasting. Adam Howe is off this week, traveling for a wedding, I believe, but have no fear. I have a guest here to help us out this week with our FAAB considerations as we head into the All-Star break. You know him from the Fantasy Baseball Beat. You know him from Roto Baller. You know him from Fantrax. We know him as our favorite Chicago White Sox fan, Mike Carter. So awesome to have you here. You know I love talking baseball with you, Mike. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Kevin. I was really excited when you reached out. It was Friday afternoons work well for me to record because I'm technically off on Friday afternoons in summer, so it worked out great. And quite honestly, I'm probably the only White Sox fan in the entire industry, so that I've ever run across. So it's been a rough couple of years, as you know, but we're making some progress.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. And kind of not always the team we want to stream pitchers against. We're finding out on occasion here as we go. Let's just jump into some news and notes. As I very briefly mentioned, we have the All-Star break coming up this week. So as we're approaching FAAB for this weekend, there's going to be a lot of unknowns, especially with matchups, which we're typically looking at, right? And with the All-Star game throwing such big wrinkles into what we will see starting pitching rotations next weekend, what injured players will be back immediately after break. All that. This is what we're taking into consideration because we only have a 3-game week we're preparing for. A lot of people like to take a little break, and I do recommend that, but I recommend the break, but I think this is one of, if not the most important FAAB period of the season going forward, because other people, our opponents will take it off, because we have some of these things we can figure out, because we will get this little break, we can reset. Just so much to take into consideration that we don't have on a week in, week out basis throughout the season, Mike.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a couple of pieces to that. I totally agree with what you're saying. There will be some people that will take the weekend off, not thinking too much about what's happening next, and will be thinking about next weekend's FAAB run instead of this one, and they're going to miss out on some people. You also have the people that are fantasy football stuff is starting to creep into my timeline as well, and I'm not a huge fantasy football guy. I play just to kind of, I guess, keep the saw sharp a little bit in the off season for baseball, but not super active. So you got people that are abandoning their teams for football now, or maybe not paying as much attention to their teams as what they once were. And you also have the fact that it's deep in summer. People are starting to go on vacation. They're missing some stuff. This is a great opportunity for you if you're behind somewhere or looking for category help to really mine that this weekend while your opponents or league mates might be doing something else. If you're like me and you're in your early 50s and you have no social life to speak of, really, it's a great opportunity for you to be able to sit at home with the computer and see who's available and see where you might want to make some moves.
Mike, I would love to say I'm like you and in my early 50s, but I have reached mid 50s at this point. So, but yeah, and also, it's July 11th. We are less than 3 weeks from the trade deadline. That's throwing wrinkles in as well. So, as I said, we'll jump right into some of this news over the past week. I went a little light because of everything that we've just prefaced this with, so much unknown. But there are some things I do want to touch base on. First of all, as we will see on Friday evening, we're recording late Friday afternoon Eastern time, before games have gotten started here on Friday, for those of you joining us on Sunday, as usual. And on Friday, the Astros have called up their number one prospect, Bryce Matthews, at AAA so far this season, 283, 400, 476 slash line, 10 home runs. But I think what's going to be really appealing to those bidding in FAAB this weekend is the 25 steals already this season at AAA for Bryce Matthews. So what do you see as far as playing time number one, and that's going to be really tough. We have a weekend and then a break, and we're looking towards what will his playing time be next weekend.
Yeah, that's going to be a really fun thing to watch because I'm a big believer that when you call up a guy like this, you're not calling him up to sit. You know, he's not coming up to get 2 or 3 at bats a week and spell somebody. He's going to play. The one thing that's really interesting about Matthews that gives me a little bit of pause is that he's got some really insane home road splits. All 10 of his home runs have been hit on the road. He doesn't hit. He hadn't hit real well at home in Texas, which is interesting because you know that PCL league is known for being a high offensive league. So the thing is that he's not what you would call a big home run hitter, but the speed is very apparent. I mean, I think he stole 32 bases last year. He gets on base. He does have a fairly high strikeout percentage for a guy that doesn't have an insane amount of power. So it'll be interesting to see how they use him. He does get on base at a really high clip, though, historically. So this is a person that I think could really help them. You know, when you look at Houston's depth chart, it's a little surprising to me, just based on name recognition, how well they're doing with what they've been running out there. I mean, they're running out Paredes leading off, Myers hitting second, Altuve is there, Cam Smith has really kind of come on, but they're getting a lot of mileage out of Victor Caratini, Taylor Trammell. Like, they really need somebody to kind of come up and stabilize this. My guess is that what they'll do is play Matthews at second, especially if Pena is coming back sometime soon. It sounded like he was making some progress and he's having an incredible season before he got hurt. They really just don't have a lot of depth on this team. They're running Zach Short out at short. They're running Mauricio Dubon, who's best used as a utility guy and gets exposed when he's overplayed. I think Matthews has a real chance at playing second base and seeing Altuve move more to left field and maybe do some DHing as well. I just don't think that they've called him up to sit. In terms of a FAAB bid, I think if you're really behind in steals, he's a guy that is going to get some opportunities to run and should. He is their top prospect, as you pointed out. So I don't know how much FAAB I would bid on him. I mean, I don't think he's like in a $1,000 FAAB league. He's not somebody that probably bid $100 on, but somewhere in that 50, 60 range, I could see spending, especially if you're down in steals.
Absolutely. Mike, I don't know if I've ever seen projected strikeout rates this high. We've seen guys with high strikeout rates in the minors.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually, and typically then they come in and we see these low 30s projections. He's projected for 35% strikeout rates. That scares me
Terrifying.
away completely. Yeah. Unless we just see something this weekend, and even so, it's only 3 games, and I'm rooting for him. I hope he has a great weekend and goes on a great rest of the season and career. But I think I have zero interest just due to those strikeout rates.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Little good news over in St. Louis. Ivan Herrera was having an amazing season before he hit the IL, and he has begun his rehab assignment. We're going to see him back probably right after the All-Star break. So not a lot actionable for next weekend. Maybe we see him next weekend because he did start his rehab Thursday. So maybe they do want to see him a couple of games before the break, but more so just in general going forward, how's this going to affect St. Louis's lineup?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, Herrera's had a heck of a season, as you pointed out. In TGFBI, I had him and Rutschman go down at the same time. So I've been trying to figure out what I was going to do and how I was going to kind of work around that. I didn't really want to cut either one of them, but you have to. You can't wait around for somebody for 5 or 6 weeks to come back. And so I'm going to try to reacquire him this weekend, I think, if I can. I'm using Carson Kelly right now, which is not so great. But Herrera, to your point, Kevin, I mean, in 42 games, the guy's got 36 RBIs and was hitting 320. I mean, it's just 8 home runs, doesn't strike out, walks at a pretty good clip. I think it's going to be really kind of fun to watch to see how they get him back in because they've been using Pedro Pajes back there, and he's a pretty good catcher himself. St. Louis always, I mean, I don't know if St. Louis fans realize how spoiled they are going back 30, 40 years with the catchers that they've had. They've got Hall of Fame caliber guys at just about every turn. Ted Simmons for a long time when you and I were kids. Yadi Molina there obviously is a backstop and a mainstay for many years. Now they've got two really good ones again. My guess would be here that, it's I don't know if they'll keep Pozo up or not. If they want to go with three catchers, that's hard to do and pull off. My guess is that they probably send him back down, and that they look at reinstalling Herrera there back at catcher, and also maybe DHing. The Sox the White Sox do this with Tio and Cuero, where sometimes one of them is catching and one time one of them is DHing. But when you only got two catchers, that can be a dangerous proposition. Something happens to your catcher and you got to take him out, or you pinch run for him, all of a sudden you lose the DH for the rest of the game. And that's happened a couple times to the Sox this year. So long story short, obviously they're going to get that bat back in the lineup. I think there might be an opportunity for somebody to DH there too, because right now they're using Nolan Gorman as their DH. And Gorman is a power first type of guy, not a high average guy. And really has largely, I would say, even though he's 25, been kind of a disappointment. I mean, he came up like a house on fire a couple of years ago, but really hasn't been able to replicate that. So I'm guessing they're not going to waste too much time getting him back in the lineup, keeping Contreras at first. Alec Burleson has been really hitting well. Mason Wynn's been hitting well. Brendan Donovan's had a nice year. Some of this depends, too, I think, on what they do with Arenado. I mean, there's been some talk about them trying to move him, but I just don't know where there's an exact easy fit for a 34-year-old third baseman who really looks like his best days are behind him. So it will be kind of interesting to watch here in the coming week to see how they fit Herrera back into this picture.
Yeah, it's intriguing. I think mostly for me, I was looking at the DH that you brought up with Nolan Gorman, and I think that's where, Pages, yeah, he's hitting like 210 or whatever with a handful of home runs, but he's been serviceable. So I think they may ease Herrera back in here because um he had the other injury just prior to this one
Right.
as well, right? He's been banged up quite a bit this season, so I could absolutely see that. Let's move along to New York. Okay, we saw Cam Schittler make his debut this week, and Aaron Boone says he's going to get another start. We should see that next weekend before the break. Any interest here in Schittler for the weekend and even on going forward for the Yankees?
Yeah, I'm very interested. I think he is a person who's going to really have an opportunity here in New York. I mean, if you look at New York's rotation right now, they're a little bit banged up, and they're hoping to get by with Stroman for a while. I don't know how well that's going to work out. I think they'll probably look to skip him in certain places. Luis Hill is at some point going to be coming back. He's on a rehab assignment right now with that strained lat. We know that Schmidt and Cole are both gone for the year. So Schlittler's really got an opportunity here, I think, to really work on being there for a period of time. I mean, I just don't know, short of making a trade, I don't know what options they're really going to have there. And he did pitch pretty well that first time out. His minor league stats, looking at him, he's an interesting guy because he's gigantic. He's 6'6", he's about 230 pounds, primarily a fastball and curveball kind of guy, but he's got different variations of that curveball that a lot of people really like. And what I had seen of him in the minor leagues was that he had that typical kind of like low 80s, 12-6 curveball that he likes to throw to the lefties, and then uses the cutter and the slider more against right-handed hitters to kind of keep them off balance. But he's got a really interesting motion. He's a big guy, and he led their farm system last year in strikeouts. So I think that there's potential here He's 24, so it's not like he's 19 or 20 years old and coming up and they're trying to protect him. He did go pitch into the sixth inning the last time. He did give up a couple of home runs, which is a little bit concerning, but he also had 7 strikeouts, and so I think that there's some reason to be interested here, especially if your teams are like mine, where you're losing. It seems like you're losing a pitcher a week. And I'm in a situation in a couple of my leagues where I had built a couple of teams around Zach Gallen and Dylan Cease and don't know what to do with what do I replace those guys? Do I take a guy like a flyer on a guy like Schlittler and let Gallen go, although Gallen's pitched really well the last couple times out, but it might be a bit of a mirage. It's just so hard to know exactly what to do, but I'm definitely interested in Schlittler.
Yeah, it's also really hard to know what Aaron Boone means by this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Jason over at Roster Resource has us has the 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 same 3 guys we see this weekend. Excuse me, there I was stumbling over my words. The
Uh-huh.
same 3 guys we're set to see this weekend. Carlos Rodon, Max Fried, Will Warren. He has those guys coming back next weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Rodon, Warren, Fried. He moves Fried to Sunday because Fried was going to be in the All-Star game. Now that's a swap, and Rodon's taking his spot. I believe that was just came out today. So yeah, maybe Fried can move up and Rodon can move to later in the week. But
Mm-hmm.
and Will Warren, they could still give 4 days off and let him pitch Friday, or is next weekend when we're going to see Schittler again?
Mm-hmm.
Or do we see him on Sunday? Yeah, lots of times teams will throw us a wrinkle on the Sunday before the All-Star break.
Sure.
So that's really my question here. I think I'm going to interpret this as Aaron Boone thinks he will use him next weekend. And even though that's not what's showing up on Roster Resource, maybe that keeps the price down for us on Sunday evening. And I think it's worth a stab to try to get him cheap. And he may be in there at Atlanta next weekend. And that's not showing up right now.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I think the Luis Hill recovery and what his return
Yeah.
has an impact on this too. So we'll have to see how that plays out. I mean, I think it's definitely. I don't foresee me putting down a major FAAB bid, but I'm going to do one to keep everybody honest.
Yep, absolutely. Um, I think there's more questions in Houston, especially the way they dealt with injuries so far this
Oh
season.
my word!
It seems like every time we say it can't get any crazier than this, as far as what we're being told about injuries in Houston, it does get crazier. Now
Mm-hmm.
we think maybe Jake Myers came back too soon, and we're awaiting more news. But he's having a heck of a season, Mike, as you
Sure
know.
is.
How do you see this affecting Houston's lineup, at least going into the break?
Boy, oh boy, I tell you, they really are snake bit, aren't they? I mean, if you look at their injured list,
Ah,
it's like a team of guys that could all be stars for the White Sox: Chas McCormick, Jacob Melton, Jordan Alvarez, Pena, Rogers. I mean, they've just had all of these issues kind of moving forward. They did call up.
yeah, and I'm somebody that I drafted so much Jordan Alvarez, including bumping him up to late first round in a couple of drafts. I wanted him uh, as many places as I could get him, and so you can guess how my season is going as a fantasy manager, based on that one statement alone. But it's just been absolutely crazy in Houston.
See, I didn't touch him because my fear always is when somebody has bad knees and they're less than 25, the knees don't get better. And it always concerns me. And I know that that's not what the issue is right now. I understand that. But I think that's not something that I remember the days, and you do too, because we're of the same age, the days of Andre Dawson having his career cut short because of bad knees and playing on bad fields, and how much that impacted his career, and guys similar to that, that had those situations. Gary Carter, Tommy Herr, those types of guys that played on that turf. It was really hard on them. Long story short, right now they're running around. They're going to probably use, I'm guessing Matthews will play second base, like we said earlier, which would bump Altuve to left. I'm guessing that they also will be using Cam Smith in the outfield. And then center field probably right now has to be some combination of Taylor Trammell, Cooper Hummel, who's actually more of a corner outfielder, and Kennedy Corona, who they just called up this week right now. I mean, I'm guessing, Corona is a right-handed hitter, Trammell is a left-handed hitter, so maybe they platoon there a bit. I'm not super interested in either one of those guys at this point. I mean, Corona might have some interest if he was playing there full time, but Taylor Trammell, who'd been a prospect, is now almost 28 years old, and I think he's just a guy that they have there at this point. But it's hard to see what the future is here. I mean, they have so many guys in the outfield that are hurt, Kevin. I mean, DeCenzo is out, McCormick, Melton, Myers. Although I think Melton's got a sprained ankle, and if I remember correctly, I think they were talking about him being out about a month, and we're coming up to about a month of him being out. So he could be somebody that comes back, but he's also more of a corner outfielder as well. Left field still leaves them that hole in center. So I think that in the short term that's what they're doing, is just kind of trying to plug the gaps. But boy, it's really kind of dire down there for them right now. Even though they're in first place in 55 and 38 right now, they've got some issues there. I wonder if they might be interested in Luis Robert or Andrew Benintendi.
They absolutely could be, Mike. Absolutely could be. I think it's interesting, and I try not to read too much into this because it is typical. First game players getting called up, they're not always in the lineup that very first game. But we do not see Bryce Matthews in the lineup on Friday. But yeah, going to be interesting to check out this weekend. How worried are we about Byron Buxton, Mike? Because he's the player we always thought he could be if he could stay on the field. He's finally showing it to us,
Mm-hmm.
and now he's a little banged up. And I, for one, super excited to see him in the home run derby. We don't that may be pushed aside now. We'll see, but it just if Byron Buxton is healthy, he's going to be in Minnesota's lineup. If not, he won't be, obviously. And we've seen them shuffle all kinds of guys around. This is more. I just want your opinion or a few words on Byron Buxton finally showing us what he can do in a healthy season.
It's funny. We were talking about him on the podcast last night. Torres is a big fan, and we had brought him up, and we were talking about him. And the thing that was interesting about it, and I liked Chris's perspective on this, is that in a 15-team league, you got to really think twice about taking guys that have that injury history, just because it's so hard to replace them when they go down. But in a 10 or 12-team league, it makes way more sense to take a guy like Buxton than it does to try to draft a guy like Lourdes Gurriel, where you know what you're getting, you know that it's going to be run-of-the-mill type of stuff. It's going to be definitely unsexy, but you know what that's going to be. But you have a guy like Buxton who has that type of league-winning upside in a 10 or 12-team league, and so that's why you gamble on him. To your point, he was out last night with a hand injury. Haven't seen their lineup yet for Friday night come out yet. Like you said, it's late Friday afternoon, so we haven't seen that yet. I'm personally worried about him being in the home run derby because I'm afraid he might hurt himself. But I'm always a guy, and I will say this. I'm obviously I know you guys know that I'm a big White Sox fan and everything, but guys like that have this type of natural talent that are number one picks. He was the second pick in the draft in 2012, going back a long way now. You just love to see these guys be able to do what they do because it's just so good for the game, and it's good for fans to be able to see guys like this really hit their stride and hit their peak. He's a heck of a player. He's got 20 home runs this year already. He's got 17 steals. He's hitting 270. His on base percentage is almost 340. The sprint speed is there. The range is there. The bat speed looks great. He's been healthy. And when guys like that get healthy and the skills can really coalesce, this is kind of what you get. And it's really good for the game to see him doing so well. That being said, I'm always leery of drafting. And there have been a number of times in the last couple of years where I have had that itchy trigger finger looking to say, oh, but Byron Buxton is there. And here we are in the draft. Is it too early to take him? And I'll be like, I'll talk myself out of it, especially because I do most of the leagues that I play in are 15 teamers. And so in those situations, I tend to avoid people like this, which is also probably why I don't win as much as I should. because I just really am risk averse when it comes to somebody like a Buxton or a Yordan Alvarez. I mean, there's a 50 home run season lurking in Yordan Alvarez, right? Maybe 60 home runs if he's ever able to stay healthy. And Buxton is a 30-30 guy easily if he's healthy, right? So I have to really reflect on that and reconsider that this winter, I think, Kev.
Well, it takes luck too, Mike, because this season, as I stated, I was all in on Jordan Alvarez, and I finally stopped drafting Byron Buxton. So if I'd have flip flopped those two, my teams would be in a lot better shape. So yeah, absolutely
I hear
love
you.
it. Um, all right, here's something that is actually going to give us a little bit of things to ponder for next weekend, for FAAB this weekend, is what's going to go on with the New York Mets. We're going to get KODAI
Yeah.
SENGA back here on Friday to face Kansas City. Now, when I first put this note in there, Sean Manaea penciled in for Sunday. I do not think that is the case any longer, and we're looking at Clay Holmes was possibly going to piggyback with Manaea, and then we're going to have the break, and we're looking at who's going to be in this Mets rotation next weekend, and one or two guys of these, because of the injuries, might be available. So it's worth spending a little time on here, Mike.
Yeah, so they are really interesting to project here because, like you said, the word on the street had been that Holmes and Manaea were going to piggyback off each other on Sunday, but that Manaea was going to start and Holmes was going to come in. But Holmes is currently listed as the starter for Sunday, and if we extrapolate that out to next weekend, and they have Manaea going on well, they have Holmes listed for Friday, then Manaea for Saturday, and then David Peterson for Sunday. So it's hard to say exactly what they're doing. Is it wise to have Kodai Senga go tonight and then give him 9 days off before he pitches again? I maybe there's a method to the madness there, but he is outstanding. But they also Manaea probably is the bigger issue because he's had two injuries with the elbow and the oblique that he's coming back from. And with that changed arm slot with Manaea, we don't really know what we're going to be getting when he comes back. I think that there's going to be somebody that's going to be willing to overbid on Manaea if he's still out there that I'm not willing to do. I would probably wait and see 2 or 3 starts before I made any type of bid, which means that I won't get him. And Senga is not going to be free in too many places, I don't think. I just activated him in my home league today off the IL. I'm very excited to get him back.
Yeah, this is kind of scary, right? Because if you just look at roster resource and you're like, oh, I'm going to get David Peterson as a lefty versus Cincinnati away from Great American Small Park next weekend. I'm not so sure, right? Because we could see, like you said, I don't think we will see 9 days off for Kodai Senga. I think we see him next weekend at some point, and very well could be that Sunday start versus Cincinnati. So yeah, definitely something to. I'm going to say this a lot, I think, throughout this show, Mike. Pay attention, even though we know they don't always tell
Mm-hmm.
us exactly straight what's going to happen. Pay a lot of attention to what teams are saying this weekend because it's all we're going to have to go on. Shane McClanahan finally started a rehab assignment. I am one of the players that did draft Shane McClanahan often and have dropped him everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I want him back. I don't know if I'll spend enough to get him back, but it just, what's your general thoughts on Shane McClanahan finally getting a rehab assignment started?
Boy, he's just a really difficult guy to kind of project, right? I mean, he's had these arm issues and now he's got the triceps issue, which was not a structural injury, which was good news. He did throw, I think 2 nights ago, 1 inning only. He was scoreless, gave up a walk and struck out a guy. I think the problem that you're going to have here is even if you do get him back, it's middle July now. Even if you were to get him back in early August, Tampa is one of those teams that they're always in it. It seems like they're 50-44. They're currently in third place in the AL East. I just wonder if with him, if they're going to really watch it. You know, they've already talked about in their situation, they're looking at some pitching rotation stuff there too with Drew Rasmussen, who they're talking about limiting innings for him and trying to keep him around 150. I wonder if their best case scenario would be that Rasmussen and McClanahan kind of go off of each other and piggyback, you know, go 3 or 4 innings and then let the other guy kind of go in. My worry about it with McClanahan just beating around the bush is that I worry about not only the durability, but also are you going to get meaningful stats that are really going to be able to help you if he's only going 3 innings at a time? You know, you might get some strikeouts, but you're not going to get wins unless he's piggybacking off of the starter. I just don't know if the bang is worth the buck here. And the problem that I have with it too is that he's never, even when he's been healthier, he's never pitched a ton of innings. I mean, I think his high water mark is 166 and 222, and you know that was a great season for him. But he's very effective when he's available. The problem is how available is he going to be, and how does that really help push the bottom line of your fantasy team?
Yeah, and still, even with the rehab beginning, still so many questions when you're coming back from nerve issues, hasn't pitched in 2 seasons, just so many questions. And I am one of the ones, I just want to see Joe Boyle in the rotation on a
Yeah,
regular basis. Just
you
give us
could
Joe
see that
Boyle.
too. Yeah.
All right, Mike, I saved this for last, and because you're my expert here. Uh, it actually occurred before last weekend's FAAB. We did have the opportunity, if we were interested, to bid on Colson Montgomery.
Mm-hmm.
This is a guy that 2-3 years ago had pretty high expectations in the prospect community, and that's kind of dwindled. Not kind of, it's dwindled quite a bit, and I'm not so sure why. I think the more I look at this, I'm becoming more and more intrigued with what Colson Montgomery might be able to do for our fantasy rosters the rest of the way. Am I crazy, or is the fact that the general sentiment is seems to be down on him to my advantage?
Yeah, it is to your advantage. I picked him up in quite a few leagues last weekend because I know I'm a homer, but the thing is that the Montgomery is an interesting player and very divisive because there are a lot of people who don't think that he's a shortstop because he's a bigger guy. You know, he's 6'3", he's about 230 pounds, but he actually looks the part. You know, they called him up purposely over the last week because they feel like he performs well on the bigger stages. And so even though the batting average was down in AAA, he had made some pretty significant adjustments to his swing. For those of you that are following along closely, you know, they sent him back down to the Arizona complex in May to rework his swing with Ryan Fuller, who they had just hired last offseason from Baltimore to help rework the organization's offensive philosophy and how they teach these guys how to swing. And the one thing that I noticed right away, I was at the game on Monday night where he made his home debut. He made a really nice play at shortstop and started a double play there. That was a really nice play. And I'll tell you this: he's not going to steal bases. He's probably not going to hit for a high average, but I do think that this guy is going to hit some home runs. His bat speed, I didn't recognize this until I really started looking at it after I got home that night. But his bat speed so far, in a very small sample size, was 76.5 miles an hour. That's 5 miles an
That's
hour
elite.
above average. That's elite. And you know, Toronto's got a guy that swings that hard in this elite two named Addison Barger, who has made a lot of really good inroads for fantasy players this year. The swing reminds me a lot of that. It's he's going to make some hard contact. He's going to strike out a little bit, but he also has a pretty good eye and doesn't chase a lot. So the walk percentage is going to be up too. The thing I like most about him, Kevin, is that I think the White Sox again called him up and are going to give him a really long runway. Chris Getz really wants to make sure that they're strong up the middle, which has always been an issue for White Sox teams going back a long way in my life. They've now got Kyle Teal behind the plate. They've got Mydroth and Montgomery up the middle. And I think they're going to trade Luis Robert, but you know they're working on developing a center fielder or maybe signing one in the offseason. I don't know how that's all going to work out, but they're really trying to address that and get some stability at those positions because they've not been stable positions for them for a long time. So I think this guy is actually going to play. I mean, he's going to get a couple hundred at bats here in the second half. They might spot him against lefties. You know, they're playing 2 today. He didn't start in the first game against a lefty. They put Mydroth over at short, who had been playing shortstop all season for them and is adequate at shortstop. But they really want Montgomery to be that guy. I think Montgomery down the road, due to his size and due to the fact that, you know, it looks like the Sox might take a shortstop with their first pick this weekend. They also have a young guy named Jacob Gonzalez that they're high on that plays shortstop as well. Montgomery is going to be an impact bat at some point, 25, 30 home runs. I'm not saying that's going to happen now, obviously, with half a season, but that could also come at third base as well and not shortstop, although he is intent on playing shortstop. We had Scott Merkin on from MLB.com this week on the podcast talking about the White Sox, and he was talking about the sheer work ethic of a guy like Montgomery and that he is fully intent on remaining a shortstop and doing the work that it takes to remain at shortstop. So I'm actually quite high on him, and I do think, going back to what you said, it is a buying opportunity for those of us in the know who need help at the middle infield position and might need some power help because of the fact that the prospect pedigree looks like it's down. You know, the funny thing is he's still only 23 years old, and he was a 3-sport athlete in high school. They drafted him out of high school, and he had played very little baseball. He's an Indiana basketball star. You know, he's an all-state player in Indiana basketball. And for those of you who don't know, Indiana basketball is like religion. So this guy is he is no stranger to the spotlight, and I think he's going to do pretty well once he gets his feet under him. I love the swing. I love the fact that he swings. He means it when he swings. There are no check swings. There are no, you know, it is full velo. Here, I'm going to bring it, you know. So it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, I think so, Mike. That I am so happy that you are in because I was thinking that I wanted to be, and I was kind of treading lightly due to what I've been hearing other places. Yes, I understand the strikeout rate, and I just brought it up a couple of minutes ago and said a 35% strikeout rate projection scares me away. 30% doesn't, right? That's a huge
It's a big
huge gap.
difference.
And the fact that he's projected, we even brought it up at the time when we were talking about it, low 30s. We see that with some of these guys, especially with such great bat speed. And I think for me, the thing is, you know, the note on his Fangraphs prospect page is that 2023 may end up being an anomaly, and I'm like, 2023 isn't what makes me like Colson Montgomery.
Right.
Right? I like that he played less than half the games in 2024 at a higher level and performed better than in
Correct.
2023. So I
Correct.
don't understand the big drop off in perception of his performance after 2023. And as long as he can keep it in that low, right around 30% or even in the high 20% strikeout rates, he's off to a great start, only 6 games. But if he can keep that strikeout rate just manageable,
Yeah.
I agree. I think the power's there.
He's going to have to learn how to handle the fastball at the top of the zone, which was always a knock on him in the minors. But who isn't that a knock on? I mean, think of hitting high fastballs is really a very difficult thing to do.
Yep. Absolutely. All right, Mike. I probably, as I usually do, we get going through these news and notes, and I forget to take a break when I'm supposed to. So
Amen.
we're gonna jump into some recommendations by category and maybe just some more general strategy talk this week because of the first half of the week all being off days. But we'll get to that right after this quick break. All right, we are back. This is On the Wire. I am Kevin Hasting. Adam Howe is off this week. I am joined by Mike Carter from the Fantasy Baseball Beat. Mike, just let us know where can instead of we wait until the end of the show and the music's playing and everybody's already tuning out. Let everybody know what you got going on.
Yeah, so thanks for that. And I'm part of the Pitcher
Yeah.
List podcast family, as you are. Thank you for welcoming us to the family. Chris Torres and Dave Funnel and I host the Fantasy Baseball Beat together once a week. We are thrilled to be on the pitcher list group. As a huge step up for us, and really happy with it, and had a lot of fun with it. And then I'm also writing 3 articles a week over at Rotoball, where I write a couple of category. One category stuffer page for hitters per week who are rostered less than 50% in Yahoo leagues. I also do the same thing for pitchers, starting pitchers. And then I also write a little quick prospect update, of which Bryce Matthews and Cam Schlittler were 2 of the guys that I profiled in the last couple of weeks that I thought might be coming. And that worked out pretty well. And then I also cover bullpens over at Fantrax. So I got enough to keep me busy. Besides having my job and then tutoring on Sundays, I've got a lot going on, but I really enjoy writing. And you can find me at the worst Twitter handle of all time, which pretty much been decided, at MDRC0508. I'm there and available. The other thing that I'm a real big proponent of, for those of you who might not know, is mental health, especially in men. We talk about it on our podcast every week. Trying to get men to open up and talk about things that are going on and not bury things deeply, and try to give some tips on how to handle some of those things. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Love it, Mike, and I love the mental health. My wife is a therapist. We've had talks about this in the
Right.
past. Love it. I just listened to the episode uh, with oh goodness, uh, Jalen Thompson,
Yeah.
your Kansas City Royals episode from last week,
Yes.
and Torres bringing up sleep as a part of that.
Oh yeah.
Just love that he brought that up. It's such a huge deal. All right. Let's get into some categories, Mike. What do you
Yeah.
think here? Um, if we're looking at, as we said, we may talk some more general things. We'll still try to bring up some players, but if we're talking power for this coming week, this weekend's FAAB, who are you looking towards if your team needs some power help?
I looked a little bit longer out than just the weekend for this one, and a guy that's circulating on the waiver wire in a lot of places that shouldn't be is BRYCE. I think a lot of people are worried about his playing time. They have had him catching a little bit more, to spell Austin Wells a little bit. I think that if you look at his StatCast page, you're going to have a real hard time finding anything more red on anyone else's page. This is a guy who's hitting 233 with 14 home runs, and the batting average scares people away, but the XBA for him is 294. This is a player that is got a very low chase percentage at 22%. The bat speed is 74 miles an hour. The hard hit rate is 54.5%. The barrel percentage is 15.7%. It just feels like it's a matter of time until he explodes. He's only 36% rostered on Yahoo right now, which I think is sinful. His metrics are off the chart. I think a big second half is coming for this guy.
Nice, nice. I did go a little more short term, and this is something that I will have to monitor over the weekend. But I'm looking at your White Sox. I think it was your White
Yeah.
Sox. Yeah, who they got going. Yes, and they're facing at least one lefty. I don't think the All-Star break is going to mess too much with Pittsburgh's rotation there. Yes, we won't see Paul Skeens until Sunday next weekend probably, but
Right.
we know that going in. We will see Andrew Heaney, and I think Austin Slater has also been getting a few starts here and there for your White Sox versus righties. So I think we see him at least 2 of the 3 games next weekend. And when you prorate Austin Slater's numbers out over a full season, he's a 30 home run guy. We know this about Austin Slater. That's
Mm-hmm.
who he is, but we're typically only going to see him versus lefties. No one will get at least one. And I really think we'll get a second start out of him in deep leagues. Things are very, very barren out there on the waiver wire right now for several categories, including power.
Mm-hmm.
But so in deep leagues, I think Austin Slater, somebody we're taking a look at anytime Chicago has a lefty or two coming up rotation.
Yeah, I think so too. And the other part I think about that is that it seems pretty apparent that they're going to trade Luis Robert, and that if they eat some money on Benintendi's contract, they could move him too, which means there's going to be at bats in that outfield for players. And I don't see them moving Slater. It sounds like they want to keep Talkman too. That Talkman would be available in the right deal, but he's been a real leader on that team, and he's played actually very well for them. And so I would not be surprised at all to see Slater stick around and get quite a few more at bats in the second half.
Love it. Absolutely love it. How about if we're looking for some stolen bases? Maybe we're lagging a little bit in runs scored. We like to
Yeah.
make sure that we don't forget about that category when we're talking speed or just in general. Who are you looking towards this weekend that may help next weekend and going forward in the speed categories?
I just wrote about him this week, and I think a lot of people are going to be surprised when I mention this name, but that is Tyler Freeman, who is raking right now for Colorado. We brought him up in our Glarf side chat that we have on, our group chat that we have. And Dave McDonald, my good friend, and your good friend, was talking about Tyler Freeman and how the Indians let him get away, and was sort of lamenting that. But Freeman right now is batting leadoff on that team and playing every day. He's either DHing or usually playing right field. He's also got shortstop eligibility, which can help people in a lot of different leagues too. But he's hitting in that spot, and right now, over the course of time, he's got 9 stolen bases since the middle of June. He had 373 in June. He was hitting 433 in July so far. Actually, he got 2 hits last night. He's up to 441 in July. So the guy is just absolutely putting the bat to the baseball. He's going to score some runs too. He scored 14 runs in June. He's only got 3 so far in July, but Colorado's kind of run across some hard times. But he's had games of 3 hits, 2 hits, 3 hits, 2 hits. He's had 5, 6 multiple hit games so far in July. And he's getting on base and he's going when he's got the opportunity to do so. So he's somebody that I think he's only rostered in 17% of Yahoo leagues. And the fact that he's getting those at bats, and that Colorado really doesn't have any other, they don't really have anybody else that they're really running out there to get that time. I mean, Brenton Doyle's playing center. They've got Yanquiel Fernandez, who they had just called up. They're running Jordan Beck around out there, but they've also got DH at bats for people. This looks like it could continue in the short term for him.
Yep, I agree. Somebody we talked about, Tyler Freeman. It's been amazing. I remember it's been 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I was looking at him, and his stolen base numbers didn't look all that great until you realized that all but one of them had occurred like in the past 2 weeks at the time, and he's continued that since then. As you bring up, 9 stolen bases in the last month. I mean, that's that's a 60 stolen base pace is what
Right,
he's been
right.
on for several weeks right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and if he
it's
keeps
great.
hitting, he's going to keep going for sure.
Yeah, one thing that we really didn't know last week when we talked a little bit about Esteury Ruiz is what kind of playing time are we looking at with the Dodgers? And as far as starts, it really appears short side platoon for
Mm-hmm.
Esteury Ruiz, but we will see him late in games. And we are to the point in the season where I feel I will stream for stolen bases and use guys like Esteury Ruiz. And he's still very readily available just because I think most of us, this is what we thought the playing time would look like. I don't think many hoped for a whole lot more than this, but but it could come. You know, they just brought back James Outman. If that
Mm-hmm.
works out better this time for them, great. But he's had multiple opportunities and it hasn't thus far. So Michael Conforto, every time it looks like he's starting to turn it around, he drops right back off. So I'm not so
Mm-hmm.
sure we won't see more playing time for Esteury Ruiz at some point going forward. And and like I said, we're to the point in the season where we know if we may have rosters where we have enough of a cushion in home runs, in RBI, even in runs scored, because it's such a
Mhm.
lack of playing time. Typically, we don't worry about that with the stolen base guys.
Sure.
But I might throw History Ruiz out there from time to time, not a set and forget, but to try to grab
Sure.
some stolen bases here.
Absolutely. That's an interesting pick. I hadn't thought about him too much.
Yeah, and he was picked up in a few leagues. 23% he is now rostered in the main event, but still readily available out there. All right, typically for opportunity, we have 7-game weeks, 5-game weeks. We don't have any of that. Every single team in Major League Baseball, as of right now, scheduled for a 3-game week upcoming. Colorado is at home for those 3 versus Minnesota. Cincinnati is away from Great America's Small Park for those 3 at the New York Mets. Tampa back home. These Tampa home series are going to become fewer and further between. Their schedule was very front loaded to the home games. They do not want the outdoor games in Florida the deeper we get
Mhm.
into summer. So
Mhm.
fewer and there will be a lot less um, Tampa home series upcoming, but they are home this coming weekend versus Baltimore. And the Athletics, West Sacramento, the debates are over. It is definitely hitter friendly.
Sure is.
But the Athletics are away this coming week and the following week. I did make that note. The first full week coming out of the All-Star break, the Athletics are then away for 7. So a 10-game road trip coming up. The reason I made that note is I may be more interested in some Athletics pitching depending on matchups than I would normally be, just because of all these road starts coming up. With all that said, Mike, and anything else you want to take into account, whose opportunity do you like coming up?
Well, um, again, another player that has been sort of under the radar for a period of time, and that's Colt Keith, who's playing on a daily basis for the Tigers at this point, who are running away with the division. But they've recently shifted Keith to the number 1 spot in their order. Good left-handed bat there. He is absolutely murdering the baseball right now. He's if you look at his rates over the last couple of weeks, he's hitting 464 in July so far. Couple of home runs, 5 runs knocked in, 6 runs scored. He's getting a couple hits every night. He's had 2 home runs in the last 3 games. Somebody that I think really should be on rosters more than he is. I think when I wrote about him today, if I recall correctly, he's about 18% rostership in Yahoo. He gets Texas next week in Texas, which, DeGrom is probably going to throw one of those. Eovaldi will probably throw one of those, but Jack Leiter has not really been terrific. He's been really inconsistent. And this Detroit team is rolling offensively, and I expect that to be able to continue. So if you're looking for somebody that's got some pop, I think Colt Keith is a guy that you might want to take a look at. He's not going to get a lot of steals, but he is, I think, going to hit for a pretty good average the rest of the way. He's always hit for a good average in the minors, well over 300, and he's getting on base at about a 350 clip. So somebody that you should be looking at. And in Yahoo, he has first base and second base eligibility, which I think is an underutilized thing. People miss that a lot. Those guys that become those Swiss Army knives that you can use in multiple places can become incredibly useful as injuries kind of drone on in the season.
NFBC, he's eligible at both middle and corner, and he's available in almost half of 12-team leagues, online championship. And as you said, I think he's. Uh, I don't know if it's quite post hype, but
Yeah,
it kind of is. I think what he has done recently is going unrecognized by a lot of people. I think is the way I would phrase that. So I'd love you bringing him up. Another guy that's been playing versus lefties for Boston, Romy Gonzalez,
Oh, he's been
and
great.
with the return of Alex Bregman, I think we're going to see Gonzalez at least versus lefties, and then a few righties here. And it appears once again that we will see two lefties. Now it's a couple of good ones for the Cubs next weekend, so it's not a slam dunk that Romy Gonzalez is going to go out and rake next weekend, but he will get his playing time, and it will be versus a couple of lefties out of the 3 games, I believe. And he's widely available, even in 15-team leagues. He's available in 2/3 of them. And Romy Gonzalez, much like Colt Keith, a lot of multi-hit games recently. So I'm going to ride that streak while it's still going.
I like that pick too, Kevin, because his competition at first base right now is Abraham Toro, and Toro has been a godsend for them. The combination of him and Romy Gonzalez has really kind of kept them afloat in a really tough division. But Gonzalez is a better player than Toro, in my opinion, just in watching the games and passing the eye test. And Gonzalez does have that eligibility all over the field too. And Marcelo Meyer is going to play second base with Bregman coming back tonight. But he's had some struggles too, so it's not unheard of that Romy could get some opportunities, back over at second base too if they're not happy with what they're getting out of Meyer. The outfield there, as we know, is a really crowded situation. They just got Masataka Yoshida back too, and so it's becoming crowded there. But Romy is going to play against lefties, and he is absolutely assaulting lefties right now.
Yep. Let's talk some pitching, Mike, right after we take another quick break. All right, we are back. This is On the Wire. I am Kevin Hasting, joined this week by Mike Carter, and we are going to talk some pitching category help here for this, I think, 16th FAAB run of the season. We're over halfway, well over half, Mike, as we're
Wow.
approaching the All-Star break here. But if we're looking for wins and Ks next weekend, this is really tough, as we've alluded to throughout the show. We, and even when we're doing our FAAB on Sunday, we're still not going to know about a lot of these teams' plans. We got to try to piece it together. But with all of that said, anybody you're interested in that may be available for us for next weekend?
Yes, sir. There are definitely some hidden gems, I think, out on the waiver wire. And when I write that article every week over at Rotoballer, I am always sort of interested by what I see as guys that I think are could be incredibly useful in a league that seems a little bit slow to respond a lot of time to adding guys that I think could be useful. And the guy that I'm really interested in some places, I've added him in quite a few, is EURY PEREZ. He seemed like he was kind of a forgotten about guy coming back this season because everybody knew he wasn't going to be ready to go right off the bat. But he's available in quite a few Yahoo leagues at this point. And his last 2 starts, he's been great. His first 2 starts, they were kind of easing him back in 3 and 4 innings at a time. His last 2, he's gone 6 innings, and then he's gone 5, 7 strikeouts in the one game, 8 in the next one, only 1 walk, 1 home run, only 1 run surrendered. So the home run was a solo shot, didn't hurt him at all. I look at him and I see a young guy that is coming back from major injury. He's going to pitch this Sunday. He gets Baltimore this Sunday, which doesn't help us in FAAB, but he's going to line up to pitch again probably next weekend as well. And definitely somebody that I think should be on your radar if he's not scooped up in your league already.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He lines up to face my Royals next weekend, who
Correct.
have shown some signs recently, but definitely not a lineup I'm scared of.
No, that bottom third of
So
your order there is really kind of a problem.
absolutely, and hopefully it's just bottom third now. It had been bottom half earlier this week. We saw Jack Caglione finally doing some things, so hopefully
Yes,
now it's bottom third, not bottom half
sure.
of that lineup going forward. Um, yeah, I'm kind of looking more at because of all the things we've brought up, it's more that I'm watching situations over this weekend and trying to pick up anything I can before Sunday night when I have to make
Mhm.
these decisions.
Right.
Right? Like, I brought up the New York Mets situation earlier, and it's not as much as, oh, if David Peterson is pitching next weekend, I want to run out and add him. There's 15-team leagues where I'm already counting on David Peterson in some
Right.
spots, and
Right.
I'm not so sure we are going to have a start out of him next weekend. That's the type of thing I'm looking at. We think we're going to get Tyler Glasnow back with the Dodgers. How does that affect things? Will he go over 5 innings? Maybe. He's kind of stretched out in his rehab, so
Mhm.
he might, but who's going to be his follower? Because that's been a big deal in LA when we've seen, how crazy everybody went over Emmett Sheehan when we were actually told he will be Otani's follower. That made him gold, right?
Right.
So
Right.
it's these situations that I'm trying to look at next weekend. I'm always going to be a fan of a lefty versus your White Sox. Sorry, I'll throw any lefty
Sure.
versus my Royals as well, Mike. So
Absolutely.
guys like Andrew Heaney for next weekend, I'm interested in. But yeah, I'm looking more at the groupings and seeing if there's is there something I can do that will give me an opportunity. Cleveland has been a bad offense for quite some
Mhm.
time now. Guys like JP Sears and Jeffrey Springs are available going into Cleveland. Getting them away from West Sacramento, like I said earlier, is appealing to me. These are the guys I'm
Mhm.
going to be looking at for next weekend. Guys like that.
Absolutely. Great choices.
All right, if we're looking for some ratio help, not necessarily chasing wins and strikeouts, guys that can, maybe they're not going to give us enough innings to really help our ratios, but they stabilize them and give us some innings. And if they happen to snag a win, a save, get us some strikeouts, that's icing on the cake. But who are you looking at for some ratio stabilization this week?
One that you brought up that just a minute ago is somebody that I'm interested in, Emmett Sheehan. Definitely a player that I think more people probably should be interested in. He, I think, has the ability to be able to be a significant help in that rotation. You look at Los Angeles and you see the names and you automatically think that they've got it covered, but Dustin May looks like he's kind of running out of gas a little bit. They're really going to protect Shohei. Glasnow, I think they're not going to they're going to try to not overtax. We all know the injury history there and want to be careful with that. Kershaw's 37. Yamamoto's been pretty stable too, but really what Los Angeles is only trying to do, I think, is try to figure out what three guys they're going to use in the playoffs, right? And so it's kind of an open audition right now for those guys. And so Sheehan is somebody that I'm definitely interested in. He threw last Sunday in relief and he threw 80 pitches. He is, like you said, going to replace Otani tomorrow on Saturday after Otani does his inning or two, however many he throws. So you're going to be looking for Sheehan to probably get 5 or 6 innings there against San Francisco at San Francisco, which is not so great, but I think that could still be okay. Another guy that I'm really interested in too, Kevin, is Jack Perkins for Oakland. Or, oh, not Oakland. The Athletics. Sorry, I'm still old habits die hard, friend. But Perkins is definitely someone that should be on fantasy players' radar. I'm getting the sense, and I could be dead wrong on this, that Mason Miller is available for trade. And I think that if somebody gets Mason Miller, there's been a lot of talk that he could go to a contender, but there's also been talk that teams are interested in keeping him long term in the rotation. He's almost 27 now, so he's not a kid anymore. If Mason Miller was on the move, I think that the next closer for the Athletics would be Jack Perkins. He came on in relief the other day, struck out 5 guys in 3 innings, looked really, really sharp. He's a 25-year-old kid out of Indiana, go IU. Definitely somebody that should be on your radar. He could actually bump into the rotation as well. They're running Severino, Lopez, Springs, and Sears out there right now, and look like that 5th spot seems to be a bit of a question. I mean, they had Mitch Spence in that for a while, Gunnar Hoagland. Kind of hard to see how that's going to work out. So Perkins is somebody that I think should be on your radar. I picked him up for about $5 in a FAAB run last week in Glarf. I'm hopeful that I might be able to parlay that into something bigger down the road.
Love that. Love it. Absolutely. Um, people that listen very often at all know when we're in this category, I'm typically looking at a reliever, not necessarily the closer, and usually not because they're not available. And I go to Rick Graham's holds article, and I read the first few paragraphs. He's
Uh-huh.
because he's going to talk right at the beginning of his article of who is he's excited about and what they've done recently, right?
Right.
And as an example, several weeks ago, he was the first one that I saw bring up as over the past few weeks. Now everybody's talking about how great Randy Rodriguez is. Rick was the first one I saw bring him up. Maybe there were others, but it has served me well as he is now made the next in line for saves there in San Francisco. But yeah, he brought up we saw the trade of oh goodness, I lost my spot. Brian Baker, with kind of a
Yeah.
surprising trade. And as Rick says in his article, he thinks he's the Orioles' best relief pitcher,
He was.
and they
He
just
was.
traded him away. So,
Yeah.
but they did get the 37th overall pick out of him. So that's probably about as good as you're doing for a relief pitcher that hasn't already been getting saves in his career. But what I've brought him up in this category before, but he's still not rostered.
No.
And these are the types of guys I'm looking at. And then I'll take the schedule into account. We talked a little bit about Pittsburgh gets the White Sox, and I'm gonna start kind of folding this into the Knicks category, Mike, because you brought this up. Trade deadline's less than 3 weeks away. Now we're going to see some of these guys that are currently getting ninth inning opportunities get moved. And whether or not they keep their ninth inning opportunity, I'm looking at that creates opportunities that aren't there currently for players moving forward. And so when we start looking at teams like Pittsburgh, we've been saying for 5 years he's getting traded at the deadline. Now nobody's saying that, and it's going to be the year it happens, right? That won't, I think, affect us too much. We've seen things shuffle around there at the back end of Pittsburgh's rotation throughout the season already, but there are other situations out there, and the situations that have been where there are good teams that we expect to see in the postseason, but the back end of their bullpen hasn't been great. Philadelphia, who are they going to bring in, right? So I'm going to try to, or I already have. I've just kind of forgot about what we were talking about and moved us right into the Knicks category, because this time of year, I think when we start talking trade deadline, nobody tries to figure things out more, or we don't try to figure anything out more than we do the back end of bullpens.
Right. Boy, I'll tell you, it is
And
a
this is
nightmare.
your thing.
Yeah, you're right in talking about Brian Baker. Brian Baker was probably the most stable piece of that Baltimore bullpen, and they're probably going to move a bunch of those guys. I mean, I would guess they'd hold on to Batista, but Dominguez, Soto, Cano, those are all guys that could help contending teams. One thing that I think is very interesting is looking at Boston, because I think that they will move Aroldis Chapman, and they should, and his value should be quite high. I mean, he's 37 years old. He's still throwing 100 miles an hour. I saw him pitch last night. He got a save. He's got 16 saves on the season right now, 3 wins, 39% strikeout rate still at age 37. I mean, it's just impressive. Someone's going to want him. I don't know if he's going to close wherever he goes, but he's definitely a high leverage guy that can get you some big outs in the playoffs. The one that's kind of floating under the radar there in Boston, I think a lot of people would say, okay, Mike, well, it'll be Garrett Whitlock then, right? No, I don't think so. I think what they did with the Rafael Devers trade was they acquired Jordan Hicks in that trade. And I think Jordan Hicks is going to be the next closer for Boston if they decide to throw in the towel and trade Chapman. Whitlock is too valuable as a multiple inning weapon and as a guy that they can bring in at any time. I don't see Greg Weissert being that guy. He's just not a high volume strikeout type of guy. Hicks really has not been this year either, but he's got the velocity and he's got that sinker that he can use to get guys out. I would not be surprised at all if it's Hicks there. And so that's somebody that I have circled. I think if you're looking for saves late run, somebody that can maybe get you 4 or 5 saves, and you and I both know what a difference that can make down the stretch for a team. It can be the difference between finishing first and finishing fifth. Definitely look at somebody like Hicks. I think in Chicago, again, not to keep badgering people about the White Sox, but I think that the White Sox have a couple of pieces there that they're going to move to in the bullpen, which surprises people. Steven Wilson's been very good for them. I think he's going to get moved. I think that there's a very good chance that Cam Boozer, when he comes back, is a lefty that could get moved for a situational guy, which would leave the ninth inning, I think, for Grant Taylor and Jordan Leisure. If you've not seen Grant Taylor and don't know about him, folks, let me just give you a real brief background. He was the ace at LSU before that guy named Skeens got there. And Skeens and he remain really close friends. And I think that Taylor's future will probably be in the rotation with the White Sox. I don't think that's going to happen this year, obviously. But Taylor is the highest leverage reliever they have. He is a 99-mile-an-hour flamethrower, 29% strikeout rate already in only 11 games that he's pitched. He's definitely somebody that should be on your radar. I know that the White Sox are not going to get a lot of save opportunities, but they are playing better baseball. They're more competitive in games. The games have been a lot tighter. Someone's going to get those opportunities, and I think it'll be Grant Taylor.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in some shallow leagues, Raisel Iglesias might have been let go.
Yes.
Make sure, because I think he's got that back. And yeah, it's just, there's quite a bit going on. Are there any other situations? I said I wasn't going to look at it from this angle, but now I'm really thinking about it. Is there anybody you're worried that does have a set for for the most part has the ninth inning role that you're worried about it getting moved and losing it?
Yeah, I think so. One team that I am not sold on Daniel Palencia as the closer long term for the Cubs. He's done a really nice job. There's no doubt about that. I don't think that they're in any danger of moving Ryan Presley back into that role, even though he's been way, way, way better than people think. He had the one blow up that was really famous, but since then he's been terrific.
He's been good,
He's
yeah.
not striking guys out, but he's getting outs. I think that the Cubs are going to look to upend the back end of that bullpen. It would not surprise me at all to see them make a move for just say a guy like maybe Kenley Jansen or maybe a Raisel Iglesias, as you're pointing out, a veteran guy that has been able to get big outs for people. So that Cubs situation's got me a little bit concerned. I do think Pittsburgh is going to trade Bednar and Santana. Two names that I would be looking at there potentially would be Isaac Matson, who has come up and done a really nice job for them in a setup role. But they also have Braxton Ashcraft, and I'm not really getting what they want to use him for at this point. He's going to be a starter eventually. I think he might actually start some games for them down the road this year. They're going to really work to control his innings. That's a situation that's going to bear some interest as well. And it would not surprise me at all if the Dodgers were kicking the tires on some guys to add to the back end of that rotation, as if they need another guy that can close games. They've got Scott, they've got Vesia, they've got Yates. Trinan will be back at some point, maybe. Kopech. He's hurt all the time. Evan Phillips is out for the year. But I would not be surprised at all, would you, if they all of a sudden ended up getting a right-handed, guy that they can use to shut people down at the end of the game. Personally, I would love to see Shohei close games. I think that would be just a remarkable thing to see. And that could happen in the playoffs. You never know. But I don't know how realistic that is. Maybe they make a move for somebody else that we're not seeing. Maybe they go after a Ryan Helsley, who could be available. Maybe they go after it. Nothing that they do surprises me because they have the money to be able to do whatever they want. And if there's somebody they really want, they're going to go get them. Could they look at trying to get a guy like Andres Munoz if he's available? I don't know that he's available, but boy, can you imagine a two-headed monster of him and Tanner Scott at the end of games? I mean, good luck.
Right. Yes. Very, very intriguing this time of year with the back end of bullpens. So a perfect week to have you here with that being one of your specialties, Mike. I want to circle all the way back to where you started this category. Aroldis Chapman.
Yeah.
When we look back on his career, is there a player that throughout the different trades of his career has been more valuable to all the different teams that flipped him?
No.
I mean, even the Royals recently got Cole Reagans for him.
Right. 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 Yeah.
And we've seen him get traded at the deadline and then re-signed by the team that traded him 2 months later. They brought him right back, but got value for him. I mean, he's been involved in so many trade deadline deals throughout his career. I don't know if anybody else has brought back as much value as he has.
No, I think that's a really good point. I hadn't really thought of it that way, but I think that's incredibly true. I mean, it always seems that he ends up signing with a team that ends up falling out of it, and then he gets moved at the last minute, right? But he's still bringing that velo. He's still got a great ERA. He's still a high strikeout weapon. It's just remarkable to me that a guy that's that age with the number of innings on his arm. I mean, he's pitched almost 800 career innings in the major leagues, and he's got, what did I see? Like over 1,300 career strikeouts. I mean, it's 30. Yeah, he just went over 1,300 strikeouts last night. They announced it on TV. The guy's just remarkable, just a remarkable arm. To be able to be that age and still be bringing that kind of velocity to me is just absolutely frightening.
It's crazy, Mike. Well, I think we pretty much covered it. I mean, not a lot of specific player names, so the we had some, but I think in general, this is a very non-typical FAAB week, but as I said earlier, a very important one for our
Mm-hmm.
teams going into the second half of the season. Anything else you want to leave our listeners with? Anything from general advice to a player that popped in your head you forgot about bringing up to a mental health minute? Anything
Mm-hmm.
you want to bring up before we go, Mike?
Well, I think the first thing, thank you for having me on. I always love coming
Oh,
on with you and having a conversation and just kind of keep that going. When we're in Arizona every year, we have a ton of conversations, just very much like this. But I think the one thing that I always want to try to remind people about when they're playing fantasy baseball is that the game is supposed to be fun. And no matter what you do, whatever philosophy you follow, whatever draft doctrine and software you look at, at the end of the day, you want to roster players that you enjoy. You want to roster players that make you excited to look at the box scores at the end of the night or in the morning and whatever. So just remember, whatever you're doing, to go out and have fun. If it's not fun, you really need to examine why you're doing it and why you're going about it. To me, it's about the camaraderie that I've been able to develop with people like you over the last 4 or 5 years being involved in the industry. I came to it late. I only started writing during COVID because I had time. And I've been lucky enough to be able to be in the field and work for some great websites and work with some great people, and have really enjoyed it. The other thing that I would just say to the listeners is, make sure that you're taking care of yourself too. I mean, we talk about that on our podcast all the time about the mental health minute, but it's really easy to suffer in silence. It's really easy to take emotions and things that you're feeling and really bury them inside, but they end up becoming problems later on. They show up in other things like lack of sleep, blowing up at the wrong people at the wrong time. It comes out in, people drinking more than what they should, or becoming somber and morose. So if you're ever in a situation where you need resources, I've had several people reach out, and this is probably the best use of our platform, right, Kevin? Is like people reaching out and saying, "Hey, I've heard you talk about this. Can you help me find resources in my community?" Absolutely, I can help you find resources in your community. By trade, I'm a special ed teacher, a special ed administrator. I'm actually recording this podcast in my office right now because there's nobody here and it's quiet and the Wi-Fi is good. But you absolutely can reach out to me. Again, my Twitter handle is at MDRC0508. I put it in every article I write in case somebody needs it. And every once in a while, somebody does reach out and we're able to connect and help somebody out with that. So we're really about being in it together. This industry is inclusive. It is not just about the people who write and the people who record podcasts. If you need help and you're a listener and you're somebody that's feeling alone or needs something, please do reach out. We'd be happy to have a conversation with you and get you in touch with some people who can give you a hand.
Absolutely perfect, Mike. I am not going to try to expand on that at all. I just echo the entire sentiment 100%. So that's going to wrap it up for episode 222 of On the Wire. After all of that, on behalf of Adam Howe, who will be back next week, and Mike Carter, thank you so much once again for joining us this week. I am Kevin Hasting. Thank you for listening, and we bid you goodbye.